Hello, students who are in UTC. Welcome to my basement. As you can tell, I think it looks like it's after 5 o'clock. I don't know, I have a real problem reading things backwards, but you should be able to see it really well, and you may enjoy the map. I'll stick my hand in. It might be a random cat who joins us at various times. But anyway, I am giving you a mini lecture on chapter 4. We are also going to talk about chapter 4 this Friday in class, and you've already worked on all of the BDP assignments. So this should be rather short, we can hope, and there will be more discussing that happens Friday. So I'm going to hit this as quickly as possible. That's all I'm going to say. So yay, and I should just get to it, right? Okay, so chapter 4 is really well outlined. It talks about the posture of engagement in reference to the culture. It talks about the direction that one is to take, the challenges, and then it ends with the call. Like, don't forget what we're called to. So, posture of engagement. Posture, we're all very familiar with a posture. It is really just the stance that you take. A faithful posture of engagement is thoughtful, it's intentional, it's long-term, and proactive. Let's use synonyms to say those same words. A faithful posture of engagement is thoughtful, meaning it's full of thought. It is intentional. It is on purpose. It is long-term. You could easily say that it's not short. It is meant to last, to be engaged in for a long time. It's not a one and done. You guys get the idea. And a faithful posture of engagement is proactive. The best synonym that I have for that is proactive usually brings with it the idea of I'm for this and not that. Like, all that comes to mind is abortion, and I'm proactively against abortion. So I'm for being against abortion. And it's weird to use negatives in there, but you guys will understand. And oh, look, I had a text message from my daughter. You don't need to worry about that. Okay. So within that stance of being full of thought, on purpose, for a long time, and being for it, how you act shows that you are for it. We need to contemplate culture. There's a cat for you, okay? In contemplating, that takes into account love, learn, and tension. So when it comes to the loving part of contemplating culture, your book said, whom you would change, you must first love, and they must know that you love them. This type of love is never imposing. It is only proposing. Excuse me, Iris. You're not helping. Thank you so much. Okay. We're going to talk about that more in class. Oh, great. And this is Milo. Thank you, Milo. This insinuates learning, because part of loving someone is learning about them. It also insinuates that there is a tension within culture. And we would say, yes, of course, there's a tension in culture. Why is there a tension in culture? Because things are not as they ought to be. No newsflash here, okay? So that's all part of contemplating culture. And within that, there's also reading, writing, and sharing. You are not a true culture student if you do not read, if you do not write, and if you do not share. Now, does that mean you have to be published? Nope, does not. But the learning includes reading, writing, and sharing. And there's no way around that. Okay. From contemplating culture, we go to cultivating culture. Once again, there is a reading, writing, and sharing aspect of that. Cultivating culture. So think of cultivating in the farming sense. Sometimes it's called disking, but they would have these really narrow wheels, almost looking like saw blades, that were attached to an arm on the back of a tractor, and they would run that through the dirt before they would sow seed. And it was to slice the dirt and to cut it and to get it ready for the seed so that the seed could fall into a place, it could germinate, the roots would go down, the plant would go up. That's the idea behind cultivating. This includes virtue, awareness, and wisdom. Now, virtue is not a word that we talk about or use a lot, but the ideas behind it are still around. We're going to make sure we define those. You have defined them on your BDP. But think of this cultivating of culture, the cutting and slicing of the dirt, not cutting and slicing of culture, but actually cutting and slicing of yourself so that good seed can be planted. And once the seed is planted, the hope is that the roots go down and the plant goes up. Okay. Then there is the other part known as entering into community. You never do culture alone, and this is the basic idea behind this. Once again, there is a reading, writing, and sharing aspect. So the book made sure to tell you that you are not born with this innate gift of being able to just come in and change everything. Culture is engaged with by normal, everyday, average people. Yes, there are always people who are above average, but no one has this amazing gift where they can just come in and change everything all by themselves. Okay, so it's not a superhero trait. Okay, entering into community is always a challenge. It's scary. Your community doesn't have to be large to engage culture, and whenever you engage culture, it is not a one against the masses. You bring what you have learned from the group. Sometimes you physically bring the group. You guys get that. You're teenagers. You kind of move in herds, albeit small herds, but everybody has a friend that they feel more confident and comfortable with. Now, some of you are fine being alone, and I'm not saying anything against that. All I'm saying is that you bring with you what you have been around and been exposed to and learned about. Okay, once again, not rocket science. Okay, the direction of the posture. So there is a model that he talked about, and it was about creation, fall, and redemption. So I'm just going to define those because this is the model that plays over and over and over again. So creation, was a rich biosphere of purposeful interaction with a model, skill, and God's personal guidance meant to be spread throughout the whole earth. The idea was to create and relate, and work was part of it. So this is how the model started. And once again, I do mean literally back in Genesis 1:1, but this is the idea of the stances. There's always this model, and it is a perfect model, okay? But then there is always a fall. Sometimes we refer to this just as sin, but sin creeps into everything. So there will be a fall of sorts anytime you engage with your posture of engagement. Sometimes you are reacting from it. Sometimes you are coming at culture after the fall. Okay. Why is this? Because spiritual warfare is real. Because sin is multifaceted. There's the sin of unbelief. There is the sin of autonomy. I can do it all by myself. There is the sin of irresponsibility. There is the sin of rebellion. And there's lots of other sins, but they all get together and get twisted, and it's never like pulling a staple out. It's never nice and neat. You have to unbend the legs to get the staple out nicely, and even then you'll find that maybe part of the leg breaks off and stays in. So there's always just this sin aspect after the model. And then there is the redemption aspect. Redemption is, it's all Jesus. But think of it as armor. When we wear God's armor into the culture, redemption breaks sin's grip on the world. It gives us the possibility to be discerning without being cynical. It focuses on the good, true, and beautiful without conforming. It is a lifelong process. It aligns our emotions with the truth in our feeling and our thinking, and it makes true creativity possible. So, redemption is amazing, and everything and everyone needs to be redeemed. So that was the stance, posture of engagement. That was the model that you will see played over and over again. And then, of course, there are always challenges, because when you engage culture, you are being in the world, but not of the world. Okay. What are the three the three biggest challenges? Fear, friendly fire, and getting too close. Okay. I think you guys could probably come up with stories. Fear is a big subject. There's a lot of things to be afraid of. When you try and do the right thing, people will misunderstand you. People who believe the same things that you do will misunderstand you, and they'll take shots at you. It's called friendly fire. And then when you get too close, there's always the chance that you're going to fall. And what I mean by that is fall into the very sin that the people are partaking in, that you're loving and trying to get them out of. That is just a possibility. But that does not mean that we just quit and don't get close. That does mean we need to know how culture is affecting us, We need to be aware, am I making excuses? And we need to be aware, am I trying to do it by myself? Because those are the warning signs that something bad's going to happen. Okay? Now, once again, this isn't rocket science. Over all of this, we need to remember the call. The call is to overcome fear and engage the culture. I really liked this sentence from your chapter. It said, our influence, my influence, is only as good as my ability to cultivate, there's that word again, virtuous habits of engagement. Now, I wrote it as our influence is only as good as our ability to cultivate virtuous habits of engagement, which is true, but make it personal. My influence, Mrs. McFarling's influence, Caitlin's influence, Samuel's influence, Brett's influence, Bella's influence, Abby's influence is only as good as Abby's ability to cultivate virtuous habits of engagement. And what that boils down to is that every choice, every day matters. And the last thing you will find on your notes is this quote: the gospel is like the light of the sun ruling the day, shining light everywhere so that even those who are completely lost may find their way. In the light of the sun, the darkness and all that prosper therein must flee. It's just a neat thing, and it helps us to remember that the gospel is the light of the sun. It's not me, it's not you, it's what God is doing. It is the gospel. And I also think of this every time I hear that. We're familiar with how the sun shines during the day, and even if we have cloud cover, we know that above that cloud cover, the sun is still shining. We are also having a cat fest here. You're also aware of the moon at night. Now, whether or not you can see it, same thing applies. The moon is lit by how much sun it got. And then all through the night, it reflects that sunlight that it soaked up. And if you think about the earth and how the moon goes around the earth and how the sun is shining farther away from that, and number one, they're spherical objects and they're going in this orbit that is kind of roundish but not perfectly round. And it is always amazing to me that the moon might be super bright one night, and another night it might be not as bright, and then you can only see certain parts of it. But it's still, no matter what the case, it is reflecting the amount of sunshine it received. And that is just beautiful, because it reminds me that God is in charge of what happens and how it happens, and His will prevails. He's going to do what He's going to do. Now, that doesn't mean that we get a pass. We still do what He has told us and called us to. We still have a posture of engagement. We still get involved. We allow the cultivation of ourselves. But it really is about God. And I know we talked about this back in chapter 1. It is because of how great God is. That is the ultimate God's glory perspective. Yes, God is working through us, but it is because we have a great God that the moon reflects the sun, and it reflects it in the darkest of night. And when the night is super dark, that's when the moon is most bright. I don't know if you guys saw it this week or have noticed that obviously it's not light out early in the morning anymore. My husband and I were going to a prayer meeting at 6:30 in the morning. And I was staring out the window because it was dark and I didn't want to wake up. And all of a sudden, I didn't see the moon, but I saw the stars. And I saw Orion's belt, but not just his belt. So that's a formation of stars. Not just his belt. I saw the whole formation of Orion. And it was because it was so dark out and the stars were shining. And once again, I know that there's probably a step in between that I'm missing, but it just caused me to pause and remember that it is because of our great God. Our God is so great. He's not wimpy by any means. And because we have a great God, He allows us to engage with culture. He allows us to get close. And yeah, there are challenges, fear, friendly fire, getting too close, but none of that thwarts His purpose. So anyway, I need to be quiet or otherwise this will not be short. That's all I have for chapter 4. Once again, the chapter 4 is just outlined really well and really easily. It'll be a short quiz when it happens, and we're going to talk about this more on Friday.